Welcome, folks, to the 101st episode of the Lessons from the Cockpit Show. I'm your host, Mark Hasera, and for over 60 years, my passion has been everything aviation, as you can see here behind me. On the Lessons from the Cockpit Show, we interview some of the most fascinating and intriguing pilots, aircrew members, maintainers, aviation enthusiasts from all over the world. We want to hear their stories, but more importantly, what did they learn from being in these extreme and extraordinary military, commercial, and even general aviation environments. And today is one of those days, general aviation, private aviation. And I'm really looking forward to this. Our purpose is to show you how does the aviation world work, but more importantly, increase critical thinking skills both in the air and on the ground. Some of the stories that you're going to hear on the Lessons from the Cockpit Show have never been told before. They're being told here for the very first time. This episode of the Lessons from the Cockpit Show is brought to you by Wall Pilot, custom aviation art for the walls of your home, office, or hangar. These are beautiful profiles of famous airplanes, like the KC-135 you see here above my head. They're printed on 4, 6, and 8-foot sheets of vinyl that you can peel off and stick to any flat surface. And yes, they are waterproof. We have 158 ready to print right now at wallpilot.com, but we can also do custom airplanes for you too. I have about 800 profiles that you can pick from if you want to do something custom. If there's an airplane that you really love, that you want your name on with a certain unit that you're from, a weapons load, whatever, we can do it for you. Go to wallpilot.com and purchase one or two of these great profiles because that's what helps keep the show going. Also, subscribe. Come join our All Ranks Club. Or better yet, if you don't want to join All Ranks Club, just contribute to the show. I've put my PayPal and my Venmo links in the description below. So today, what we're doing is, this is kind of an unusual story. My wife and I got invited to the National Business Aviation Association's big convention in Las Vegas. And as we were walking out of the main convention hall, a young man just happened to bump into me from behind. Turn around, I said, "Hey, my name is Mark Hasera. Who are you and what do you do?" And he's got a great aviation story from Kilimanjaro to executive jets into Miami. On today's show, we're going to talk to executive jet pilot Derek Knight. So grab an adult beverage of your choice, sit down, strap in, and let's begin the Lessons from the Cockpit Show with my good new friend and executive jet pilot, Derek Knight.
Good afternoon, Derek Knight. Welcome to the Lessons from the Cockpit Show, brother.
Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate you having me. Really appreciate it.
Well, I'm anxious to have you on because I think I've only interviewed one other pilot or aircrew member, from the business world. And why don't you tell everybody how we met? Because that's kind of an interesting story. And then I'll ask you the question I ask everybody is like, how'd you get bitten by the aviation bug? But
Yeah, no, I appreciate being the second. It's an honor, it really is. It was Las Vegas, NBAA. I was actually walking, not paying attention, being clumsy, and I bumped in the back of you and your wife, and I felt so dumb doing it. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm here to network, and here I am just bumping into people. And yeah, you introduced yourself and said, what's your story? And that's just kind of how it hit off, and here we are.
yeah, and we were just talking just for those few minutes. And I told you, I said, "Hey, I do a podcast, man. It's time to have you on."
I
And here we
appreciate
are.
it. Here we
We
are. I
are.
like it. I like it.
Thanks for coming on again today. I
No, I
really
appreciate it.
appreciate
It's
it.
an honor. It's an honor.
So, again, the first question I always ask everybody, how did you become interested in aviation and a career as a pilot?
Yeah, airplanes have always intrigued me as long as I can remember. I mean, I think they're the most fascinating things ever. I was growing up in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I lived on the Final Approach course, and I used to watch him fly over, and thought, man, that's just got to be the coolest thing ever. Never been in an airplane, but I just know it's got to be the coolest thing ever. And when I was 10, I actually moved to Africa with my family, and I got to go on my first airplane ride, and I was just hooked. I was absolutely hooked. I remember them putting the throttles forward and just get thrown back in my seat and just thought, oh man, I have to do this.
Whoa.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have to do this. And that's kind of how it started. Yeah.
Africa, what were you doing in Africa? Your family moved to
So
Africa.
yeah, my family were actually missionaries. So my dad
Oh,
taught
fascinating.
yeah, my dad taught at a theological university out there. So moved out there when I was 10, and then I went to boarding school for high school. And yeah, it's an awesome opportunity.
Where?
Uh, my family lived in Uganda, just outside the capital city, Kampala, and then I went to boarding school in Kenya.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so Uganda and Kenya share a border, but
Yes.
the two cities you're talking about, though, that one is a long bus ride, wasn't it?
17 hours. 17 hours.
17 hours to go
Yeah.
see mom and dad? Wow.
Yeah, and I was on the British system, so I had school for 3 months, then I had a month off, then school for 3 months. So every 3 months I was doing that bus drive.
And but what did you do during the month that you had off?
You know, I just spent time with the family. I
Yeah,
love dirt biking, so I had a dirt bike that I'd go dirt biking. Had some friends I made, so I'd hang out with the friends. And
yeah.
then later in high school, I actually did an aviation internship with
Oh,
a
did you? Where? With who?
mission aviation fellowship. So I basically went over there and I said, "Hey guys, you guys don't know me. This is who I am. I want to scrub your floors. I just want to be around the airplanes. And then in return, can I just sit right seat on some of these flights?" And they were like, "Absolutely." So that's what I did on my days, on my month off.
So you were able to accumulate some hours just by sitting in the right seat, traveling with
Yeah,
all these, you know.
I got to definitely be exposed to, the
Mhm.
world of turboprops and stuff like that. I couldn't legally log any of the hours or anything, but I was just so happy to be up there and just take it all in. And those guys did some crazy flying out there for sure.
Well, and I'm sure, Derek, you're landing in some weird places, aren't you? I mean, dirt
Yeah, I
strips
mean,
out in the
some of the
middle of
places,
nowhere, right?
exactly. Some of the places you'd land, I mean, it was like, they'd be like, all right, you got the field made? And I was, no, I don't. Like, am I blind? I don't see it. And they're like, it's a literal field. And that's just where we sat down and yeah, crazy stuff.
So were you taking other missionaries to these other places, or was it like cargo? Uh, what kind of stuff did you guys have in the back of the plane?
It was kind of a mixture of both, to be honest.
Was it?
Sometimes missionaries, that's the only way they could get out there. So we'd fly them
Yeah,
out there. We did medical evacuations, people need to get back to the
yeah,
hospital. And then we just did supply runs,
yeah.
bringing fuel out there, food, whatever it was. So,
And you know what, Derek? I- If I was flying like that, you know, I would be I'd be flying low, particularly over some of these animal reserves. I'm sure you
yeah,
got to do that too.
yeah. The
And
first thing they taught me
and
was to do
mhm.
a low pass over the runway to scare off the giraffe and the zebra and everything. Yeah.
But what an incredible flying experience, man.
Oh, it was amazing. I'm so blessed. Couldn't make that up. Couldn't wish for a more better experience to get introduced to aviation.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And Kilimanjaro. I'm sure you did a few laps around Kilimanjaro.
I mean, pictures won't even do it justice. I mean,
Really?
it is an amazing. Africa is such an amazing continent, and flying around it, I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible.
You know what, brother? I've only flown over it. I've never had boots on the ground, and that's one place I would really like to go. And a matter of fact, Kenya and the big game reserves there is the place,
Yeah.
I'd love to go. I've flown over, Egypt a lot, obviously going to the Middle East. I've flown over, down near the Horn of Africa and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I've always, looked down from like, 32,000 feet, and gone, I'd really like to make it there someday.
Kenya
So,
is a special
what,
place. It'll always hold a special place in my heart for sure.
so how long were you in Africa?
I was in Africa for 9 years. Yeah.
Wow.
So from 10 to 19 when I graduated high school.
Okay. So when did you come back to the States and when did you start flying? When did you start flight school?
So I moved back to States July of 2017.
Hmm.
I was 19, graduated high school, and I moved to Lakeland, Florida. So in between Tampa and Orlando.
Uh-huh.
And my brother was going to school there, and he was just married, so he said, "Hey, you can rent a room for me." And so that's what I did, and I got a little job as a valet at a hospital. And I was going to community college, but my heart wasn't really into college. It just
Yeah.
wasn't for me. I don't really learn the best like that. And yeah, I I did not like the valet. I did not like working there.
Um,
And I met a pilot. I actually applied for a job at an FBO.
uh-huh.
It's the best thing I've ever done. And I met a pilot there, and he said, "Man, if I were you, I would go get my ratings first, then go back to college."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, I hadn't thought of that." So I finished the year off, and then that summer I started flying, and I was working at the FBO part time, well, full time to pay for it. So I wasn't flying as much as I wanted to, but uh, that's how it started. Yeah.
So how long did it take you to get your rating?
It
Your
took
ratings?
me probably a little longer than most people just because I was paying for it as I go,
Yeah.
taking a break here and there. Uh, there's some hiccups along the way with just flight schools that weren't always the best to me. So
Yeah.
it took me a little over 3.5 years.
Okay.
So
But you're
yeah,
still working at the FBO during this time period, aren't you?
the whole time I worked at the FBO for 5 years. Even actually when I was flying professionally, I was still part time at the FBO because I liked it so much. I liked it so much.
So explain to my listeners what a fixed based operation or FBO is and what they do.
Yeah.
Because this
So
is really fascinating. And there's FBOs all over.
yeah,
Obviously, down in Florida, there's a number of them between Orlando and Tampa, you
yeah,
know. So
yeah.
just explain, some of the things that you would do when working at the FBO.
Yeah, so like you said, fixed base operator, basically, it's the easiest way to put it is it's a terminal for private jets. So they would come in, and they don't really have to go through security. We can pull their car right to the airplane. So, I mean, they're just getting out of the car and walking into the airplane. We handle all their bags, we do fueling, catering, really whatever to make their life easier, we would do. And they're usually a little nicer than terminals.
Yeah.
The rich people go through there, so they want to make it as nice as possible. Very personable experience.
Hmm.
Um, and the biggest thing is like there's really no security. So they don't have to go stand in line and wait for TSA. I mean, they can just pull their car right up to the plane and then go.
And off they go.
It's that simple. Yep.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff we mostly did fueling, catering. We worked with Amazon Air had moved in during my later years there,
Hmm.
so we worked with them doing fueling and catering and potable water and labs and really whatever they need. We were doing.
Now, obviously, there's a certification you go through for fueling the airplanes, emptying the lavatories, all those kinds of things. Okay.
Yeah.
And just kind of walk us through that, at first, because obviously, even towing the airplanes is a certification, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, you totally hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of certifications you have to do. A lot of it's on the job training. I think they had us do like 35 hours of like computer modules and stuff. At the time, it was so boring. I remember being like, "Oh my goodness, like, I just want to go out there but it was really necessary stuff because I mean, you're dealing with multi-million dollar jets.
Oh, yeah.
Things go bad and accidents happen, and you really got to be on your game with it. Even something as mundane as fueling the jet. I I mean, each jet has a different fuel panel, and you got to understand how that works. You can't overfuel it, and you have to balance it and all this stuff. And it's a lot. And it's even with towing, the airplane has certain limitations. It can turn if you have it
Yeah.
hooked up, and have to make sure the pins are all in. And they feel I worked at, they're a pretty big network, and they did an amazing job of teaching me. And um, I started knowing literally nothing, and the GM took me under his wing and showed me the ropes, and eventually made me supervisor. And I mean, I owe a lot to him. I mean, he really worked with me a lot and let me go fly on, let me like call out and go fly some days, and yeah, it
Yeah.
was awesome.
Yeah. So what kind of an airplane were you flying at the time period?
So at the time, I was still in flight school, so I was doing, your basic 172s, 152s,
Yeah.
Piper Cherokees, small stuff like that. Toward the later years of when I was doing just time building, I got a job at a maintenance company part time, ferrying pilots and people around and parts. And I actually still do that to this day. I enjoy doing it. I didn't get paid, but I got to build flight time in an awesome airplane, and they really helped me out. Yeah,
Oh, now that's cool.
yeah,
You
it was
know,
an awesome
kind of
opportunity.
as a side hustle.
Exactly, and that just came from networking. Just came from working there, and I built that relationship for 5 years. And then
Yeah.
they were like,
And
"Hey,
see, here's one of the things, Derek, people will think to themselves, you're not getting paid, all right, but you're building flight hours and
exactly,"
experience, okay?
hmm
And that's truly the trade-off
and it's
is
huge. It's huge.
exactly, it's huge, okay? Because you're gaining all this experience and obviously flying in Florida, you're seeing all kinds of weather, okay? You know, I used to travel to Florida a lot when I was a kid, when we lived in Atlanta, and it
Yeah,
was like you could set your watch by it. Between 4 and 4:30, there'd be a thunderstorm
every
in the
day.
summertime. And not just a little thunderstorm, I mean a big thunderstorm
Yes, yes,
that
yeah,
dumped a lot of water on you.
yep.
Okay. And there's a certain experience that comes with flying in that kind of weather. Talk about that for just a minute and the different kinds of weather that you had down there.
Yeah, I think, like you said, you really start understanding when you want to go and when you don't want to go. Some of these guys. So basically, the majority of the flights I would do were these people had their own personal airplanes, so they'd fly it into Lakeland, and then wherever they came, let's say they came from Miami, I would then take the company airplane and fly them back to Miami.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of it was just like, all right, yeah, get it done. And it really wasn't like that procedure of like, okay, well, you can go with this and this. It was like, hey, like you got this. And you really understand like the weather trends and like when the best time to go
Yeah.
and like when the best time to wait. And it really taught me a lot about, you know, the importance of, hey, we're just gonna wait an hour. And yeah, and that's fine. And like pushing the limits, understanding, okay, you're in a Piper Cherokee, so you can't really climb over anything. You're
Yeah.
not, it's not a jet. I
Or
can't.
fly through anything.
Exactly. You really got to go around it, and it taught me a lot. And just to touch up on what you said, yeah, you're not getting paid, but I think that the value of the time that you're flying is so precious. I mean, you're also flying. A lot of the clients I flew, I mean, to own an airplane is not a cheap thing. So these are
No.
very well off people. A lot of them are retired Delta, FedEx, current Delta, FedEx guys, and I'm flying them around. And at first, it was really intimidating because me with 280 hours, and I got this experienced guy in the other seat, and
Yeah, with 28,000 hours.
exactly, and I know he's judging me, and it's like, but they were always so encouraging and just like thought it was the coolest thing ever, and it was a great time to just kind of pick their brain on the career and like, hey, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you kind of do this or this? And hearing their advice was, I mean, you can't put a price on that. You really can't.
Now, see, that's a great lesson learned. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're flying, even though you're in a Piper Cherokee, you're flying with a guy or a gal that has a lot of flying experience
Mm-hmm.
and you're picking their brains
Yeah.
and you're talking to them and getting their advice and everything. I think that's a great lesson learned that a lot of times, yeah, I'd be intimidated too, flying next to somebody. Like I have an uncle who has like 28,000 hours. He's
Right.
84 years old and he still flies
Wow.
for Lancer. Okay. And here's the interesting thing is like on Thursdays, he lives at an airport, Chandler Air Park in Phoenix.
That's awesome.
And he and his buddies on Thursday mornings go up in their private planes and like do a four ship formation because they're all former
Yeah,
military
yeah.
guys, you know. But he was an instructor at the American Academy for a long time.
Mm,
And a lot of my buddies that left and went to American all said, "Oh yeah, your uncle's a legend down there,"
mm.
And he's got all this experience and he's got all of this wisdom. Oh, and he races it. He used to race at Reno too. So he's
Oh
even got
man,
that. All
that's
right.
that's yeah, that's crazy.
And yeah, when Uncle Robert talked, people listened.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people that would be in your position and your place, hey, I'm just in a Piper Cherokee, but talk to me about this, talk to me about this, talk to me about this.
Yeah.
Man, I'd be doing that the entire flight, you know.
Yeah. And that's why I still do it, to be honest. On my days off.
Mhm.
Like I think I literally have a flight with them tomorrow. Like
Oh, do
I
you?
still do it. I still don't get paid, but the value of it is just it's so precious. And it's
Yeah.
like you just can't put a price on that. And like the relationships you build and especially, the more I build time, build experience, a lot of these guys, I'm flying them repeatedly. So they always want to, hey Derek, what's going on? How's the flying going? Where have you gone? Tell me some stories, stuff like that. And all these retired guys, like they live it through you now. Like they can't do it anymore, so like they want to see it through your eyes.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
You're sitting
it's
next to a guy with 28,000 hours and he's going, "Well, hey, what did you learn this last flight?"
exactly. And the first time it happened, I was flying this guy, and he's like, we get up at cruise, and I start talking to him, and I was like, "Do you fly?" He was like, "Yeah, yeah, a little bit." I was like, "Oh, okay." And he was like, "Well, I'm a current 777 pilot for FedEx, captain." I'm like, "Wow, okay."
Okay.
Well, don't judge me on this landing, I'm still learning.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, um, so what are your certifications? I'm assuming commercial instrument, all that
Yeah,
good stuff.
commercial instrument. I actually never got my flight instructor rating. I was going to, I was
Yeah.
giving myself, I had a couple instructors that they were just building time. You could
Yeah.
kind of tell, like, they weren't really giving me exactly what I needed. And it really bothered me. It really bothered me because, I'm paying a lot of money for this and I'm not making a lot. So I'm really saving up. And I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't really want to instruct if my heart's not fully going to be in it.
Yeah.
So I kind of given myself 3 months after I graduated flight school and said, if I don't have anything, I guess I'll bite the bullet. But
Yeah.
um, I was networking. There was a operator at the FBO I was at that had a fleet of Pilatuses, PC-12s, and they took guys really early, really like no time basically, and built them up. So I was networking with that guy, and I was really annoying him. Like every day I was texting him. Every time I'd fly, I'd send him a picture. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. And he finally called me and said, "Hey, we want you to come fly for us as a right seater SIC."
Hmm.
And so that's what I did. That's why I started flying the Pilatus PC-12 to build some time. And I did that for about 4.5 months. And then I actually left that job to go fly a Falcon 2000.
Ah, yeah.
Another guy I networked with, he called me up and said, "Hey, we're trying to hire two guys." So I recommended him one guy that got hired,
Yeah.
and he's still there to this day. And then
Yeah.
I went in, and I was supposed to go fly there for a long time, but they lost a contract on three of the Falcons. So I was the last in, so I'm the first out type
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
I got a I got an SIC type rating in it, so GFA lets you do three takeoffs and landings, then some groundwork on it, and then you can get it's this fare 6155.
Yeah.
So I got that, and just it was a good introduction to jets.
Yeah.
And then I got on with my current company, 600 hours flying the Falcon 50 EX, and then more recently the Gulfstream 4.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the PC-12, okay?
Yeah.
Just just describe to everybody what the PC-12 is. You know, you and I know what it is, but this is really a cool airplane, okay? You
Yeah.
know, big prop, single engine,
Mhm.
but freaking lots of power.
A lot of power. That was a big jump, and I mean, it ate my lunch at first. It was, man, I mean, it was crazy how much power that thing had, and the performance of the PC-12. I mean, to this day, it's an amazing airplane. It was built for, it's a Swiss-made airplane built for the Royal Flying Air Doctors in Australia. So it was a big T-tail and it had a big door on the back so they could back the air ambulances under the tail and put it right in. And then Pilatus goes, well, why don't we make this into like a business conversion too? And it just took off. And a lot of the flying I did was to the Bahamas in the Caribbean. So we'd fly and
Really?
yeah, we'd go into short strips and I mean, it had no problem doing it. I mean, the performance of it blew my mind.
Uh,
Blew my
I didn't know
mind.
that story about how that airplane came about, you know,
Yeah,
about an air ambulance,
yeah, it was
you know.
originally for an air ambulance.
Wow.
Yeah,
I did not know that. Okay.
yeah.
And of course, now you see them everywhere, you know.
They're so popular, and it's such a good jet that I mean, the PT-6 is such a reliable engine. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. And the great thing is because it's got all that power, it can go up, you know, like to these, you know, high mountain places like where I live here in Salt Lake
Yeah.
City
Hmm.
or Aspen, Colorado and stuff like that because it's got such
Yeah.
it
You
was
see them
built for, it was
everywhere.
designed for that. It was designed for that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
So there's a friend of mine who's a owns a concrete construction company and he's got one,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
and
It's such a popular airplane.
well, and you know what? He loves it too. And I think he's got the radar pod out on one wing too. So that
Hmm.
I mean he's got it, you know, configured really very nicely. All right.
Yeah.
And I think he's even got you know, the synthetic vision systems in him and you know
Oh,
all
nice.
the what is it, three or four panels across, you know, displays
Yeah, the new
across it.
ones are, I mean, amazing. I peeked my head in the cockpit the other day of one, and I didn't fly those ones. I flew the older ones, the
Did you?
45s, which was still a great airplane. But the new avionics in these ones are insane, insane.
Yeah. So, hey, I talked to our listeners about flying out to the Bahamas because obviously, you know, from Miami and stuff like that, that's got to be a beautiful ride across the ocean and
It's
going into
some of
all
the
these
bluest
different
water.
islands.
Yeah, it's some of the bluest water I've ever seen. Sometimes you'd fly into like Nassau where you have 8,000 feet of runway and it's you're dropping people off and it's great. And then other times where you go onto these little tiny strips where it's 4,000 feet or 3,500 feet. Put it down and unload people, and they'd have their yacht sitting in the harbor, and a little boat would come over for the people and the bags and pick them up. And we'd
With
leave
all
them
their
there.
dive gear.
Exactly. We'd leave them there for 3, 4 days and then come back and pick them up later. But I mean, that airplane, the capability of it was amazing. I mean, you could keep up with the big boys on arrivals if you had
Yeah.
to coming in, or you could really slow it up and land at 80 knots. So
Okay. So that's a good question to ask you. You know, what is it? What did you cruise at? What's its top speed and what's its approach speed? If you don't mind me asking.
yeah, so man, I haven't flown in a while. Put me on the spot there. I believe it's about a 250 mile per hour airplane.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and then we'd land slow. You'd land at about 80.
Really,
So
that slow.
yeah, you'd land it very
Interesting.
slow. Yeah, and
With
it
full
was
flaps and everything. So
yeah,
that means you could come into just about any runway, 80
anywhere,
knots.
anywhere. And it had the trailing link landing gear, so I mean, it just touched down. It made you look really good. If you came down a little rough, it would just kind of like arrest it a little bit. You'd be like, oh,
Yeah, squeak the wheels.
Yeah, because the passengers only care about the landing, you know.
Oh yeah, of course.
So
Of
yeah, it was
course.
an
Yeah.
incredible airplane, incredible, and that was such a good step up from the Cherokees to the
Yeah.
Pilatus. That was such a integral part of my career and progressing.
Yeah. All right. So talk to us about the Falcon 50 that you fly.
The Falcon 50, yeah, that was my first true type rating. I call it my first love. It it was my first time going to an actual training facility.
Hmm.
It was a 17-day program and in Dallas, and you fly out there. And at first, it humbled me. It really humbled me.
Yeah.
I remember my first time in the sim. I, the spool up time on jets and stuff. Like I was too familiar with that stuff, and I came in a
Yeah.
little slow, and I put her in the lights before the runway, and I thought, oh man, like I'm never gonna get through this thing. And even the instructor made a little snarky remark. He was like, "You're not in the 172 anymore, boy," And I was,
Nope.
oh
Nope.
man, you're right. But I got through it. Amazing jet, Dassault Falcon, French made, amazing, amazing. I mean, that thing it's a race car,
Yeah.
and
How many
it
passengers? How many passengers?
it hold 9 passengers.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was 3 engines, which are super cool because you could
Yeah.
you could lose 2 engines and still fly on one.
Yeah. And it's a pretty
Just
good sized jet too.
yeah, amazing.
The three engine Falcons were well, I mean,
Yeah,
you still see them today, and it's still a pretty good sized jet.
yeah,
You
for
know,
sure. I mean, we did cross countries with them. The performance was amazing on it.
yeah. So you could fly from LA to New York in a 50, couldn't you?
Oh yeah, no problem.
Now,
Yeah,
there's a good question for you. Have you flown the Falcon internationally, like over to Europe and stuff like that?
not in the Falcon. In the Gulfstream
Okay.
I have, but not in the Falcon.
Okay. Well, let's
Yeah,
talk about the Gulfstream 4.
the Gulfstream. Yeah, so the Gulfstream was kind of the pinnacle of being in business aviation. I've always wanted to fly the Gulfstream. I mean, the
Yeah.
ramp presence of it. I mean, just an amazing, amazing machine. And I was on the Falcon for a while, for about a year and a half, and a spot came open for the Gulfstream, the G4, and I put my name in for it, and they were like, "Yeah, congratulations," So I went to school on that, and I had a little more jet experience at that time, so it wasn't. I mean, I think any type ratings gonna be a little difficult,
Yeah.
but I was kind of prepared of like how jets fly at least, so I had
Yeah.
that, and I mean that we hold 16 passengers in that, big powerful engines, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I mean
Long legs.
yes, yeah, yeah. So we do that plane. It's about 7.5 hour, 8 hour airplane, and it's I mean it's a fast airplane. It doesn't like to slow down.
No.
You know, the
Uh-uh.
Falcon we had slats, which really give you a lot of drag. This we
Yeah.
don't have anything. So I mean, we have high ref speeds. If you're coming in full, if you're coming at max landing weight, you're coming at about 160 knots.
Now
So
that's
it's
interesting. 160 knots.
yeah.
I would have thought it'd be a lot slower. So, I'm assuming that you went down to Savannah to go through school, or did you go through somewhere else?
I my company does CAE. So for the
Okay.
50, the Falcon, I went to Dallas. Then
Yep.
G4, I went to Morristown.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was 22 days in Morristown.
So walk everybody through the syllabus when you transition to a new jet like this, because obviously there's the academic phase, then the flying phase and everything. Just
Yeah.
kind of walk everybody through that kind of training and what it entails and and what you go through when you're going through training for a new jet like the Gulfstream 4.
Yeah, so whenever learned I was going to school, I looked it up and I was just so curious, like, what does this entail? And everyone said the same thing. And when I called, looked up, and said it's like drinking from a fire hose.
Mm.
And it really is. I mean, it's a lot of material. And I think first week and a half, it's just systems and just ground school. And you're in classroom from 8 to 5 every day, just going
Yeah.
over the electrical, the hydraulics, pneumatics, like everything. And
Yeah.
they really dissect the airplane and break it down. And you you get to the end of it, you don't even know your own hand anymore. Like it's everything's just mush. Everything's just mush.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you go into the simulators, and the simulators, it's not just, okay, well, let's get a steep turn in here. Like, let's, it's boom, you lost your engine. Run through the emergency memory items and all that
Yeah.
stuff. It's a lot, and you're doing 4 hours per session. So you're doing, and we all got like PIC, pilot and command type ratings. So we were always flying from the left seat. So you do 2 hours in the left seat, then you move over and go to the right seat, and you're being graded in both seats too. So it's a lot. It was a
Interesting.
lot.
Interesting. So obviously the simulator, or as I used to call it, dial a disaster, you know, because that's really what it was. All right,
Yep.
here's your
Yep.
next disaster. Okay.
Yep.
And we called it boldface procedures. That was our, engine fire, failure on takeoff, crash landing immediately after takeoff, engine fire in flight. You know, Boeing airplanes, they have obviously the rudder power was a big one
Mhm.
too. So I'm assuming that in that training, that's what you're going through. All,
Yeah. V1
engine,
cuts.
yeah, V1,
Yeah.
yeah. I lose an engine before V1. I lose an engine after V1. What are you going to do?
Exactly.
And people got to understand those are very different situations. All right,
Very.
to lose an engine after your V1
Hmm.
in the KC-130, we call it S1. You know, the procedures were very different because obviously before you could stop.
Yep.
After you
You're
kept
taking in the
going,
air.
you're
Hmm.
going in the air. All right.
Yeah.
And you know, particularly with an engine, it could be engine failed. More probably where you're living is birds.
Yeah. Hmm.
See,
And I mean,
I lived in the tropics in
okay.
Okinawa, Japan, and birds was the biggest problem. And we had seagulls and all kinds of, you know, um, waterfowl.
Yeah, I imagine. And those don't go well too well with these engines these days.
No, they don't, And I remember one night, Derek, it was about 4:30 in the morning, actually, and the sun was just starting to peak up in the east. Okay. We took off. We're refueling a bunch of F-15s, and I took an Okinawan barn owl right in front of me. Literally, it came right at my nose, and it went splat, and then it hit the windshield wiper, and the windshield wiper smeared it all over the windscreen.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. All over the windscreen. And I
Yep.
was number two in formation with another airplane. Okay. So I'm like ducking through the blood and the feathers and trying to figure
I
out,
know.
yeah. And I've hit several birds
Okay.
during my career. T-38 had one go down the right engine, took the whole engine out,
Oof.
15 feet above the ground on a touch and go. So uh, have you had a bird strike?
Luckily, I have not. Luckily, I've been close. I've been close. But
Oh, where you see them fold up and dive?
yeah, I had an owl come in the PC-12 one time, and I kind of ducked the wing a little bit and narrowly avoided it, but it was. I thought for sure we are gonna hit it. I thought for sure.
Oh man,
Yeah,
I'm telling you,
birds are definitely no joke, and
no. And like I said, the very first time I had a bird strike, Derek, I saw it go down the right intake in the T-38. Okay. And fortunately, I had done the first touch and go. My instructor had the airplane. He goes, I got the airplane, while I was still on the
right.
ground. And while as we rotated, got about 15 feet in the air, he's going to bring the gear up. I went, uh-oh, and saw it go like this by us.
Yeah.
And, you're talking about book work. And here's one of the things that, you always remember. The T-38 pilot manual said that if you have a compressor stall, it's a loud bang followed by a buzzing noise.
Hmm.
Loud bang doesn't even begin to describe the sound. I thought an M80 had gone off next to my helmet,
Wow,
you
that
know,
loud.
and flames came forward too, which was really interesting because we're going about 160 knots, and flames actually came forward as the airplanes, and then you could hear it taking itself apart. The buzzing noise was the engine taking itself apart.
Oh,
And so we were in Oklahoma, excuse me, yeah, Oklahoma, and it was hot in the summertime. And as you know, man, you never forget those boldface items, do you?
mm-mm.
You never forget those things. And here it is 40 years later. I can still remember it. Throttles max, flaps 60%, a 10 airspeed above CDOS, single engine takeoff speed, 10 knots desired. Because the inboard gear doors would come down and we felt the airplane go, whoa, like this. We went, and my
Yeah,
instructor's in the back seat with both throttles and afterburner going, go, baby,
yeah,
go.
yeah. Oh
And when
man.
those inboard gear doors came up, man, that airplane just took off like a scalded rabbit, even on the one engine.
Wow.
But man,
Yeah, these jets. I mean, that's one of the big things I learned early is when I did my multi.
hmm
My instructor saying, these piston engine multis aren't really meant to fly on one engine,
yeah,
and it's gonna fly you to your crash point. You're gonna put it down. It's not gonna be able to maintain altitude. And my instructor actually told me, he's like, you don't go around. He said, so if you land, like if there's a bulldozer on the runway, like you hit the runway. You do what you have to do.
avoid the bulldozer. Yeah,
Yeah, and these jets, I mean, they operate very well on one engine,
yeah,
very very well.
yeah. So what kind of engines do you have on your Gulfstream? I'm assuming they're Rolls-Royce engines.
Yeah, we have Rolls Royce. Yeah, putting 13.8, uh, 13,800 pounds of thrust per side.
How much gas does the airplane hold, and what do you burn per hour?
So we hold 29.5,
Okay,
1,500 pounds of fuel. And we burn, I think the first hour is 5,000.
okay,
5,000, I want to say. I have to look at
yeah,
yeah, about 5,000.
yeah. That's when you're heavy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And it can go down to, three-ish when you're lighter and stuff
yeah.
like that. But it's a lot of
So
fuel.
here's a question for you. What has been your favorite airport to fly into in your Gulfstream, and what was your least favorite?
My favorite.
Because I know you've been around a lot in the Gulfstream because it's just a fun airplane to fly, and it
Yeah.
can go to a lot of airfields. But what was your favorite place to fly in? Fly your Gulfstream into?
Man, that's tough. I'd have to say maybe Glasgow, Scotland. That was
Really?
that was an awesome opportunity. That was my first flight uh, flying in the left seat and doing international. That was my first time over there, and I just love Europe, and I like
Do
flying in
you?
Europe,
Yeah.
and it was just such an awesome opportunity to go there. Um,
And Glasgow is such a beautiful place too. I
oh
mean,
my, yeah, we had a week there,
walking
and
around downtown, I've been to Glasgow,
yeah, amazing.
and just an absolutely wonderful place. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the worst, I don't I don't know the worst.
Or your least favorite.
Probably, wow, that's a tough one.
What
Maybe,
was an airplane that was really challenging? What was an airfield that was challenging for you to get into and out of then is probably maybe the better way to say, you know, uh,
um Antigua. Antigua was a little challenging when we went in there the first time. There's summer, so there's thunderstorms all around, and um, we actually had to go mist. We had the airport in sight, and then get closer, and it just disappeared. So we had to go around and went around the pattern and came back. And it's a short runway. So you don't have a lot of room to play with. So you really got to set her down and then get on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was kind of
Antigua.
challenging. I I kind of like the busier airports.
Do you?
It's a little more work, but I enjoy that aspect of
Yeah.
it. Teterboro can be kind of tough sometimes coming in. Uh, I mean,
Yeah.
they keep you very very fast, and then they just want you to slow down out of
Yeah.
nowhere.
Yeah.
You really got to
And
be ahead of the airplane.
those air traffic controllers uh do not like it when you deviate, do they?
No,
They
they
let you
want
know
to
immediately.
immediately. They're some of the best in the world, but man, when they don't have their way, and yeah, I get it. I mean, for those people that don't know, I mean, Teterboro is it's I don't even know how to describe it. It's where all the private jets go in New York. So and it's a
Well,
busy. I
that's
mean,
interesting. Instead of LaGuardia or JFK, they go into Teterboro.
yeah, most of the private jets go into Teterboro. Yeah, so it's.
Huh.
I mean, I've heard stories of being so busy that when they land, it takes my captain told me the other day. It took him an hour and a half to get to parking when they landed.
An hour and a half.
Yeah, and it's not like a big place. It's
No,
just
it's
so
not.
busy.
I've flown into it. It's not a big place.
It's just so busy that they just can't accept people in. So they just have you park on the taxiway, and I mean, you're at that point. I mean, you're kind of running into fuel issues too, because it's like I don't have a lot of fuel to just be burning like this. Like it
Yeah.
gets very very packed, and yeah,
So here's a thought that just came to me. Obviously, when you go into Teterboro and you get that kind of a ground delay, uh, your passengers in the back may not be real thrilled with that.
no, no, they usually are not. They usually do not take delays too well.
Because they sometimes have tight timing too, or they're just impatient, you
Yeah,
know.
I think there's a mix. So I think a lot of the people that I fly, like we fly for business.
Hmm.
So sometimes we'll fly them to a meeting for the day and then come back, or sometimes it's just like those high net worth individuals or those so-called celebrities, you know.
Yeah.
And I think what people understand with the private jet market is that a lot of these successful people aren't told no by anyone, right? Because money can get them out in a situation, their fame, you know. And
Hmm.
I think we're one of the few people that can actually tell them no. And I think that a lot of them are very, hey, totally understand, you know, just make it safe. That's all, you know,
Yeah.
100%, you know, and safety is the number one priority.
Yeah.
But I think the other side of it is also like people, do you not know who I am? Do you not like I have to be here and I have to be here? And it's like, okay, sir, but like this is a factor of safety and we're not going to cut corners with this. So there's really nothing we can do. And
Yeah.
this is stuff that's out of our control, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. There are regulations against what you're wanting us to do, sir,
Exactly.
or ma'am,
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
ma'am.
Yep. Exactly. And again, like a lot of them take it very, a lot of them, yeah, I find some very nice people that, hey, totally understand delays happen, you know?
Hmm.
And I've had very few that are the other way, but it's definitely out there. It's definitely out
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, it's what it sounds like is you fly a lot of different people. You're flying businessmen
there.
to meetings wherever. You're
Yeah.
flying, you know, VIPs, high value people, whatever you want to. What was the term you used?
High
Uh,
net worth individuals.
high net worth individuals. Yeah, yeah, and uh, and all those kinds of things. Do you ever carry just like parts or packages? Do you do that too?
No, I mean, these jets are very, uh, they're laid out for passenger comfort,
Yeah,
right? So we have couches on board. We can
yeah,
sleep. We can make them into beds too, so we can sleep, you know, five people.
yeah.
Um, and then we have like a little kitchenette and stuff, and they have the flight attendant to care
Hmm.
for them, give them drinks and stuff like that. So we don't really fly cargo, just
Yeah.
normally just cargo in it.
Okay. Hey, I just thought of another question.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you fly some of these high net worth people, they have things that they like and don't like.
Yeah.
How do you find out what they like and don't like, and then how do you set up the airplane for them?
So that's a great question. So when I get assigned the trip, I get a
Mhm.
trip sheet
Okay.
from our dispatch, and whoever their broker, the client's broker, talks to our dispatch, and let's say they say, "Hey, it's this guy's birthday," just so you know. So we might put some balloons or like a happy birthday sign on
Yeah.
there. A couple of weeks ago, we flew someone from the West Coast to a Taylor Swift concert. And there's this guy, and he's flying his daughter to this Taylor Swift concert, and she's a huge Taylor Swift fan. So the flight attendant decorated the plane and Taylor Swift themed for her. And I mean, they just absolutely loved it. It was like that. They went above and beyond for
Yeah.
us, and like they just absolutely loved that. So we usually get told in like a trip sheet, or just dispatch will call us and say, "Hey, client really likes this, so we'll go to the store, or we'll
Yeah.
go to their favorite restaurant, get what they want." And really, we want to make a lot. These people are paying a lot of money for this, so like $1,000 an hour.
Yeah.
So we're going to give them the best treatment they can, and yeah,
I I was on an individual's private G550, very, very well known person. Okay.
wow,
And I tried to play Stump the Flight Attendant. Okay. All right. And I'd flown with them before. Okay.
yeah,
And this situation. And they were doing, um, in our case, humanitarian. Okay. I had a
okay,
son who was battling cancer.
okay,
And so um, she asked me, what do you want? What do you want to eat? Okay, we're going to be in the air for a couple hours. What do you want to eat? And so I love chicken Caesar salad.
that's
And
good.
I
That's
thought,
really
I'm going
good.
to play Stump the Flight Attendant. Okay. And I just looked at her and said, I want a chicken Caesar salad with like 7-Up or Sprite. Okay. She goes, coming right up. And I went, "Ugh," you know, all right. And what she told me later on, I told her, I says, hey, I was trying to stump you on that. Okay. Because I didn't think you'd have lettuce and chicken and everything and
Yeah,
Caesar salad on the airplane. And she said, you picked the one salad that this guy's spouse absolutely loves. I always have it on the airplane. And I went,
you almost had her.
oh,
You almost had her.
okay. But
Yeah,
like I said, we flew on the airplane a couple times. Um, they were helping my son out. All right,
okay,
because we were having to take him to treatments, a couple states away. And this guy offered his G550 for us to do that.
wow, that's
And
amazing.
I'll never forget this gentleman saying, and I'm sure you've run into this, okay? Because these high value people, like you said, have a lot of money,
Hmm.
but in many cases, they're very, very willing to help people out
100%. Yeah,
by chartering a jet or using their own jet.
yeah,
And we had to take him down to Houston to MD Anderson. And they had a great big bouquet of flowers in the back and a particular
wow.
bouquet and everything, all for them. And I mean, it was like you say, customer service in your business is a really, really big deal.
It's huge. It's huge, and it really starts for me. I learned that from very early on in the career when I was still working at the lines as a line service technician at the FBO. And my GM told me, he said, no, you have to treat that guy in that Cessna like it's the Gulfstream. Because a lot of these pilots and stuff, like they like to fly.
Yeah.
And yeah, the guy might fly a Gulfstream for his full-time job, but he might want to go pick up lunch in his little 172.
Yeah.
And that was the case. Like a lot of times, we'd see guys come in these small little things. It's like, oh, hey. And then they're like, yeah, we'll be back. And then a couple weeks later, they come back in some big business jet. And you're like, wow. So you really, I mean, it's all about, you don't know who you're dealing with. And if you can go above and beyond for someone, I mean, that makes their day.
Uh, I interviewed a guy that does flight ops at Port City Air in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and he mentioned the
Okay.
same thing. He
Yeah.
mentioned the same thing. And I'll tell you one story that he told us. They had uh, 4 Navy P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol airplanes all landed
Okay.
within a half hour just to get gas. And they showed up unannounced. They just called in and says, hey, we're landing at your place at 1 o'clock in the morning, midnight. All right. And he actually called downtown to one of his favorite pizza places and says, hey, I know you're getting ready to close and everything. I've got 4 P-8s. There's 12 people, or I think on each airplane. What would it take to get like 50 pizzas? And he goes, coming right up, brother. I'll do it. And a lot of these FBOs go out of their way to
Yeah.
treat people like that. And there's a lot of FBOs out there that don't do it that way.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. And I'm sure there are FBOs that you've flown into where you said, I'll always come back here. And there's
Yeah.
ones you've got into where you said, I'm not ever going to come back here.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And it's all because of service,
It's all
isn't it?
service, it's all customer service, and it's all kind of how they approach the game too. Um, we're not anything special, coming in, but we are customers, and we're buying a lot of fuel. I mean, these jets take up a lot of fuel, and we're definitely more likely to tanker out of here
Yeah.
as opposed to this other place that we're not treated as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's one of the other things I learned in this career is the power of networking is huge. I mean, I can't stress that enough. The power of networking. And I mean, every job that I've had in my career. I mean, I'm still a low time pilot. I haven't really scratched the game yet. But every job I've had is from networking. It's just from meeting people, and
Mhm.
I think I think there's something so powerful about that because people are going to put someone in that seat of the flight deck that they know. Right?
Yep.
They'd rather, oh, this dude's retiring. Who should we post an application? Oh no, what about Mark? He's working at the APO. He's a hardworking guy, always going above and beyond. That's someone I want in there because you can teach anyone to fly the jet, but you know, I work 12 days on at a time. So I'm with the same guy for 12 days, and it's like, is this someone that I can get along with for 12 days? And or is this someone that's going to be causing problems?
Yeah. Is this
And
person even competent in the airplane?
yeah, exactly. And the power of networking is every single that Falcon 2000 job I mentioned earlier. They were flying into Tampa. They're based in Tampa, and they diverted to Lakeland for weather. They left the plane, and I knew one of their pilots at the time, and he called me next day. He said, "Hey," he knew as a supervisor. He said, "Hey, we're gonna be leaving at like 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. Can you just make sure everything's fueled?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm be there with my boss." And I actually woke up and like put a suit on and went down there. And I wasn't even working. I just wanted to make sure they got all their fuel. And I just
Yeah.
I just shook his hand. I said, "Hey, I just want to meet you. My name's Derek Knight. I'm doing my instrument right now, but one day, I want to fly for you." And that's the same call I got when they needed a couple pilots.
Yeah.
So I mean, networking does pay off. It really does.
It does. And you talk about networking, you talk about confidence, um, there were pilots I wanted to fly with and
Hmm.
pilots I didn't want to fly with. Okay.
Exactly.
And I'll never forget the opening night of Desert Storm back geez, a long time ago, 1991, leadership came and says, your crew is one of the most experienced here. They're really good at what you do. You're going to fly one of the first missions of the opening night, a really important one too,
Wow.
and that was because, again, that networking and being really, really good at your craft that people
Exactly.
notice, that people notice.
Exactly.
And
100%.
I remember there was a lieutenant colonel that was working in the plan shop, and he would come fly with my crew whenever it was. He goes, hey, I'm going to go up, and I'm going to fly with your crew today. Okay. All right. You can come along or you can stay here, take the day off, whatever. And he always said, I'll always fly with your crew. If I were going to fly, and it was the old A models too, with the old 1957 engines and everything,
Yeah.
and yeah, the power of that network. And here's the other thing I noticed about networking too, is when we went back into Iraq the second time, Derek, I looked around the room and I thought, I've worked with him, I've worked with her, him, him, him. It
Yeah.
was all the same people in the
Yeah.
room.
It's a very
And
powerful.
we all knew each other. We'd all worked with each other.
Mhm.
We, in some cases, I lived next door to one guy,
Okay.
and that power of networking, like you say, particularly, I love the way that you put that you define that too, is you put on a suit and went and met him at 4:30 in the morning, and he remembered that.
Yeah.
He remembered that. All right.
Yeah.
And then when you came to him, he went, oh, I remember this guy.
Mhm.
You know, I remember this guy. So
And I always wanted to be that guy that was remembered and always was willing to do what others aren't,
yeah,
and I always wanted to. I knew the chances of getting into a jet early on were very slim, but I knew that it was possible. And I knew that networking was definitely the best way. And not only for, I've been very fortunate. I just got my first type rating at 600 hours. And I was very, very fortunate for that. But more than like what I can gain from networking, it's also that network of people that you know. When I run into like a career thing, these are people I want to bounce my ideas off of and seek advice from and help and stuff like that. And I think that's also like a very important side of networking. And I think what people also kind of get frustrated with networking is like they meet so and so and it's like a month later they don't have a job.
yeah,
And it's like, yeah, but that's not how it works. Networking is it's a cultivated relationship.
yeah,
And a lot of times it's not right away. It's years. But
yeah,
I get people that call me for things all the time. Yeah, I got a call the other day. This guy said, "Hey, man, I got this job opportunity. Are you interested?" And it's like, hey, man, like I'm very happy where I am right now, but I can recommend a couple people. This is who I think, and it's just a very, very important thing.
now that's fascinating. That's an interesting lesson learned you have there, where you said, I'm not interested, but here's some people you might be interested in. And that's taking care of your brothers and sisters, you know, taking care of the people that you've worked with. And again, those are highly competent people. Otherwise, you wouldn't have recommended them,
A hundred
you know,
percent.
that you've worked with and that have made an impression on you. Hey, this person, when they're at work, are actually are absolutely 100% into what they're doing.
Mhm.
And as a person, if I had an emergency in the airplane, I'd want them next to me.
100%. And I don't take that lightly. These
No,
these are because my name is attached to this guy. If I recommend him and he just doesn't do his job well, it's like, man, what does that say about Derek? But
yeah,
these are guys that I put my life in their hands with
yeah,
flying, and
yeah,
there are some guys I would not recommend,
yeah,
but these other guys, I was helped along a lot coming up. I was helped by countless individuals. I mean, if I was to name all of them, Mark, we'd be here till tomorrow. And they helped me, so I want to help the other people out, and I will as much as I can.
You know, the other thought came to me of trust. You know, you trust these people.
Yeah,
You trust them enough to say, hey, not me, but the I would recommend to you. And as you know, that trust can be broken very quickly.
very quickly. Yeah,
You know, I talk about trust in my book, Tanker Pilot, you know, where I'm fortunate that my community, the tanker, has a impeccable reputation for
yeah,
always knowing what's going to happen before everybody else knows what's about to happen.
yeah,
And this one tanker pilot told this F-18 strike lead, hey, go up to the north. There's an airplane up there. Doesn't have anybody on him. And he took off with his wingman, brand new Nugget, guy that hadn't been in the squadron for very long, just because that tanker guy said there's a tanker 345 miles north of us that doesn't have anybody on him. And Mongo knew that if that tanker pilot was wrong, they were going to go down that night. They would run out of gas in northern Afghanistan. And sure enough, man, he got an 80-mile lock on a single airplane in an east-west orbit. Got to 20 miles of it, saw it on his, saw it through his NVG, saw it was a tanker, and then find about 8 miles from it, saw that it had the drogue on it and everything. And sure enough, nobody on it, plenty of gas. They made their strike timing and everything, all because some tanker guy said, there's an airplane up there that doesn't have anybody on it. So,
yeah,
hey, another question I just thought of.
yeah.
Give me like 2 or 3 airplanes that you would love to fly. Money's not an object, just 3 airplanes that Derek would love to get some stick time in.
Man, I think the 550 or 650, the Gulfstream.
Yeah.
I mean, that is such impressive
Oh, yeah.
airplanes. And
Absolutely.
I mean, I would love to get the opportunity to fly those. Another one, I guess, would be the C-17.
Really?
Yeah, I think the C-17. I think, with the military, I think the F-16s, the F-35s, I think those are such cool airplanes.
Yeah.
But, if I was ever gonna go, I was always gonna want to go for the bigger stuff. Yeah, the
Fascinating.
KC-135s, the 46, the
Yeah.
B-17, stuff like that. Yeah.
Big airplanes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Interesting.
tall though. I'm 6'4", so I have to be able to fit.
Yeah, I know. I know. You're a tall glass of water.
Yeah, so like I don't know if that's 16. I don't know if that's feasible.
Yeah, yeah. You might have to put the seat up a little bit and put the rudder pedals all the way out to fit in this 16, but you
Exactly.
know,
Exactly.
to fit in the cockpit of the C-17, they call it the Moose,
Yeah.
you'd fit right in. So
Yeah.
um it's got a heads up display in front of it. It's one of the few airlifters that actually has a HUD in it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I didn't
yeah.
realize that it was a stick until I got to tour one. I always thought it'd be a
I
yoke,
know,
but
isn't that amazing? Because most Boeing airplanes have a yoke. This one's got a
exactly
stick.
blew me away. Wow. I mean, I
Yeah.
used to work. We used to host Sun and Fun, the airport I worked at.
Hmm.
So, we got front row displays of, them doing their short field takeoffs and landing, and it's just blew me away every single time.
Oh yeah.
Something of that size being able to do what it does.
Yeah. What a great air show too. Sun and Fun is just a fantastic
Oh, it's
air
amazing.
show,
It's
particularly when the air is real moist and the fighters are going by pulling G's. They have the big vapor cloud around them.
goodness, yeah,
Everything. I mean, just that's probably one of the best air shows in the nation because it's
yeah,
on the beach. You know, it's on
yeah.
the beach. I haven't been to that. I haven't been to Sun and Fun. I need to come back to Sun and Fun.
Never been.
No, I've never been. I've been to Hill Air Force Base is north of us. I've been to the Reno Air Races, which has been, extremely cool watching P-51s go by me at 500 miles an hour.
Yeah, yeah,
but Sun and Fun, the Blue Angels, put on a spectacular show there,
Oh,
you
amazing.
know, and all the big airplanes too, that C-17,
Yeah.
B-52, all those airplanes do some pretty crazy things. So,
Oh, come on down. I'll get you some tickets. Come on down.
okay,
Yeah,
I may hold you up to that, man.
we'll make it happen. We'll make it
Okay,
happen.
all
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
because I would love to do that. Anything else you can think of there, brother? We've been talking for an hour and a half.
You know, I think the last thing I'd probably just say is, to anyone out there listening that's trying to get into it, I mean, I think, everyone has their own individual path. And, I don't think there's like a cookie cutter way to do it. I think everyone does it differently, and it's so easy to compare yourself to someone else and where they're at. But I mean, I have friends that are at the majors right now that I started with, and I'm like, man, I could have been there, but I've had such a blessed route, and like I flown some amazing airplanes and some amazing destinations, and
Boy,
I
you
had to
have,
go through,
you
I had to
have.
go through, yeah, and I had to go through my own path, and like everyone has their own path, so yeah,
And I think that your story is so important, Derek, because um, you didn't go to some major aviation university like Embry-Riddle or anything. You really did do it on your own.
Mhm.
And the two things that I can think of is you had a goal, you wanted to be a pilot, and you did everything that you could to get there.
Yeah,
My hat's off to you, brother, because
appreciate
a
it.
lot of people go through the military, a lot of people, go through Embry-Riddle. I mean, and of course, there's a lot of universities that have their own flying programs, which are very expensive, as you well know, you
Yeah,
know, but you truly did it on your own. As you mentioned, I worked at the FBO. I did everything at the FBO, got the fly, got the hours, got the instrument rating, commercial rating, all those kinds of things. And you did it on your own. All
yeah.
right. My hat's off to you, man.
Thank you.
Seriously.
I wish I could say, it truly was on my own, but I had a lot of support along the way, and knowing
Oh
my family
yeah.
was a pilot, but I mean they had my back, so shout out to them. I mean I would not be there without them or the people that
Yeah.
poured into me that didn't have to, but it's if I can give back anything, I gladly will. I absolutely love aviation. I love seeing people get to where they want to be. So yeah,
Excellent. Derek Knight, thank you.
thank you so
Thank you
much
for
for having me.
spending time with me on the Lessons from the Cockpit show. All right.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
You're welcome.
To all of my listeners and subscribers out there, I hope you really enjoyed this because Derek had a really, really fascinating aviation journey. Young kid flying around Kilimanjaro, working at an FBO, fueling planes, parking them. And you got to understand, FBOs get really busy at times. We've had Jamie McCarthy on. He's talked about Port City Air. And then, of course, flying execs around and some of the unusual things that happen depending on who you've got in the back of the airplane. So I really thank Derek for coming on today and sharing his stories and lessons with us on the Lessons from the Cockpit show. This is episode number 101. I want all of you to subscribe. More importantly, join my Patreon channel, the All Ranks Club. Those of you that join at the designated driver and by the bar will get some pretty cool stuff. One-on-one time with me, question and answer time, and also some really cool stickers that we've had made. That there's 10 of them that we send to you each month. If you just want to contribute to the show to keep it going, my PayPal and Venmo is also found in the links below. This episode is also brought to you by Wall Pilot, custom aviation art for the walls of your home, office, or hangar. I have a 4-footer of my tanker that I flew, 8874, when I was in Okinawa. These are beautiful profiles, extremely detailed, stenciling on the missiles and the arming handles on the sidewinders. We have 158 ready to print 4, 6, and 8-foot profiles printed on vinyl that you can peel off and stick to a wall, like you see this one here above. Or let us do a custom one for you. If there's a favorite airplane of yours that you want with your name on it, particular tail number, unit, even weapons load for modern jets, we can do it for you. Go to wallpilot.com and fill out the custom form. So, folks, thanks for being with us today. Next week, looks like we have a retired lieutenant colonel. She was a maintainer, loved knuckle bussing and being around greasy airplanes. And she's going to talk to us about the maintenance side of the house and some really cool stuff with the F-15E and the tankers and some interesting operations that she was involved with. Thanks again, folks, for being a part of my life, and particularly to my guests, sharing some of their great stories and lessons learned, not only with me, but with you, because your stories fuel the mission of the Lesson from the Cockpit Show. Please subscribe, join my Patreon channel at All Ranks Club. Links are below, or just contribute to the show at PayPal and the Venmo links below. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week on the 102nd episode of the Lessons from the Cockpit Show.